As meeting professionals, we are concerned about picking the right venue. Isn't this a beautiful venue for this event? What a beautiful hotel. We're also looking at the food. We're looking at the AV and the technology. We're looking at making sure the speakers are accommodated. And you notice the ADA compliant ramp, which is a 1 in 12 in terms of the appropriateness of the height of the stage. You might also notice there's pink fluorescent tape around here to help so that I don't fall off of the stage. So there's a lot meeting professionals have to consider. There's also a lot to consider in terms of the ADA compliance beyond just the slope of the stage and the handrail. There's a lot of things that I want to bring to your attention. You see, you're going to be rolling with me today. You are the first audience that's ever seen this program. It's brand new. I'm going to take you on 4 case studies of actual clients. You're going to go with me virtually on the site visits to 2 locations. And then you're actually going with me to 2 national conferences for some big organizations. I'm about to go to one of the real conferences on June 19th in Baltimore to see how my site visit worked in Denver, or in December, and actually am working with them right now. The client is the Unitarian Universalist Association, and next week I'm meeting with the meeting professional team virtually as we have about a month and a half to go before this convention starts. I'm also working virtually with all their volunteers, doing volunteer training for them. So today, take notes, take pictures of the slides, ask questions at the end. I will be happy also to stick around. I'm not leaving. I'll be at lunch. I'll be at your dinner. Please feel free to interact with me, to share your story, or to share a concern or a question. I'd be happy to have a dialogue and work with you to solve those problems and concerns. So let's understand something. I've been in this wheelchair since 1998 because of an accident. And I think you need to understand that story. My husband is in the back of the room right now. He's our videographer. Mark saved my life. If it wasn't for Mark, I wouldn't be here today. You see, it was our 3rd wedding anniversary, June 13th, 1998, and we had gone for a bicycle ride to celebrate our love, when suddenly he heard what he thought was a gunshot, but it wasn't that at all. It was the sound of a large tree, 7,000 pounds, as it broke and started to fall. I heard him telling me from the back, "Look over there, something's falling," and he shouted, "Stop!" But there was nothing I could do. In an instant, I was crushed by this monster tree, followed by live power lines. So, life as a person who's a professional woman at 44 years old suddenly can't move from the waist down. That's what led me to helping meeting professionals and understanding how accessibility matters. I'm now 4'2" from a seated position. And as I roll, the environment impacts me. The thickness of this carpet has made my shoulders ache at this conference. The size of doors matters. The size of elevators, the steepness of ramps. Maybe you will understand now, as I let you leave this room, what it would be like for your attendees who are using manual wheelchairs or who have some immobility and need some accommodations in your programs. Many times my attendees tell me afterwards, "Rosemarie, I didn't know what I didn't know." And that's what I hope to bring to you today. As a result of my spinal cord injury, I can tell you from my passion and experience how you can move forward to think about digital accessibility as well as physical accessibility. So it's all about an inclusive mindset. The ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, as you know, was enacted in 1990. And so it is not just a checklist. Think of it as Like when you're cooking, you're baking something and you're putting baking powder and baking soda in. Think about inclusion as baking it into your planning. It's not an afterthought. It goes into every element that you are working on in terms of the venue, in terms of the hotels, in terms of the handouts, in terms of the virtual, the hybrid event, in terms of the captioning, both virtual and in person. So I'm going to walk you through some of these. What's at stake if you don't do it? You're going to lose members. Your reputation is tarnished. You're going to lose income, aren't you? You might lose your job. So what's at stake? Social media could really get on board if there's a group that was not served at your conference. So then you start seeing all these flamers, and then they go to the media, and pretty soon it becomes a really big issue, saying, man, I didn't know what I didn't know. I wish I had taken care of that. And then they don't spend any money with you, and they tell others, do not participate. And if you have a real complaint, someone files a grievance against your organization, the Department of Justice comes on board, and then it becomes a big issue and could be a major fine. We don't want that. What I want to do is help you with your blind spots. When you look in the rearview mirror of your car, you're always looking out for, is there a car behind me, a car to the left, a car to the right? Let me help you with these blind spots that you might currently have so that you can take them away and say, I will look for these for my future planning event. Think about what you're planning right now and how it can be planned more thoroughly. Disability touches everybody eventually. As we get older, our mobility changes, our eyesight, our hearing, our sense of cognition, our memory. You personally may have a disability. I have met people last night with disabilities. I have heard from the meeting planner today, there are 3 people here with broken toes. There's another woman here who's got a total leg brace. She had a meniscus tear. She has surgery scheduled next month. She is here today at this conference. So it could be a temporary disability or a situational where someone's pregnant, or it could be something that is gradual and will continue to be worse. But it does happen. This is the data from the Center for Disease Control. We're looking at mobility issues. We're looking at not being able to walk well or climb steps. We're also looking at cognition, not remembering very well or making decisions very well. And then the hearing disabilities and the vision disabilities. So we can see in terms of the population, 1 in 4 people in this country is likely to have a disability. That's the facts from the Center of Disease Control, 61 million. Now, they're not all visible, so you may be making assumptions with people. There may be people in this room that we don't think have a disability because we can't see it. They may have low vision, they may have low hearing, they may be able to read lips. They may have some of these other diseases that impact their mobility and their sense of belonging and how long they can be in the meeting and whether they need to be standing or sitting. There's a lot to deal with in terms of the invisible disabilities. Now, on a form, as you're trying to figure out who's coming to your meeting, I assume you're doing web registration. And then on the registration page, you have asked some question dealing with knowing who is coming with a disability so that you can accommodate them. Is that correct? Everyone's doing that. Here are 2 simple questions that you can be asking to just do open-ended if you'd like to. If you would prefer, let me show you another web registration that was done by an organization called Disability In. I am very much involved with that group as a disability-owned business enterprise. I went to their national convention in Orlando in 2023, and I captured what they asked me when I registered for the conference. I thought they did a nice job. They asked the registrants, do you have a disability? Do you want to say yes or no, or you're not going to answer that question. And then they looked at some of the specific accessibility concerns. As in my case, a wheelchair user, sometimes I bring a scooter with me on larger conferences. Blind or low vision, attention deficit disorder, or ADHD, traumatic stress disorder, hard of hearing or deaf, acquired brain injury, autism, or other. So they now have a sense when they get the registration, what is it that they're dealing with? Additional question they asked in terms of dietary restrictions. You know, there was a case where a man was eating a taco at a meeting and he died after the meeting from eating a taco. How could that be? What ingredient made him so deathly allergic? It was peanut butter. It was in the sauce. No one knew it. You don't want that to happen. So if indeed someone puts there, they have a terrible allergy, we want to work with that. Also, we're looking at CART services in terms of, do you need a live translation person, or can you have just captions on the screen? Do you need a sign language interpreter? Do you need PDF documents that are accessible? Do you have to have some Braille documents? And then large print documents, usually a 14-point font, and then wheelchair access or other. So we're looking at what they had in terms of the first screen, finding out who is coming and what their disability is, now what services they want, and now we look at not only their allergic concerns, but also their religious concerns. If you're holding a meeting during Ramadan, you better know that they're not going to be eating until the last day, the last part of the day. And are they vegan, gluten-free, or a severe food allergy? And that's where the nuts come in. So make sure that your catering service labels things or just says, no, we're not putting nuts in anything. And I'm going to show you how you can label things properly in one of the slides I'll be showing you from a case study. Now, call these people, email these people. Once you know who's coming, interview them. Some of them will give you more information. They'll say, I'm bringing my service dog with me. I'm bringing my personal care attendant with me. I'm going to be whatever. They're going to tell you what that is that they're going to be needing so that they can be accommodated and know that they're treated as a valued person, that they belong. They're included in the conference. You ready to roll with me now? Let's take a virtual tour. Let's go to Seattle first. This was the Association of American Medical Colleges and the beautiful Seattle Convention Center in 2023. The new section had just opened. I had been at the convention center months before on the site visit with my meeting planners. I love my meeting planners. These professionals are great. And the Visit Seattle people, they were wonderful to deal with, as well as the representative from the convention center. So we were there months before on the site visit. We did all the planning. I went to Washington, D.C. I trained their people, gave them pictures of what the site looked like, so they knew what we were going to do for accessibility accommodations. This is when I arrived. They rented scooters at no cost to anyone who wanted it. It was a great idea. The meeting planner actually got on one and said, oh my gosh, this was so much more efficient. I want a scooter for every large convention. Let's just rent them all the time. So she could do her job as a meeting professional. So there I was as I arrived. Take a look at the registration area. What do you see here that makes it more inclusive? You see the lower registration desk. We worked on that with the contractor to design it that way. So there was a low section. Also look at the lanyards and the positioning there. They're reachable from a seated position or a low position. And then looking at the computer, they have the computer registration at the low counter and the high counter. So this is very inclusive, great lighting, and you can see the faces of the people who are there to help you. They're not concealed by the counter. Then we go to the famous ribbon wall. They're not going to fall on the floor. They are now at an accessible height. They put a trash can there for all the little papers that you want to throw away. And everyone can look down the row and find the ribbon of their choice very quickly. Then we look at the beautiful signage throughout the convention center. It's all electronic, showing the floor plan of the floor you're on. And then the QR code you could put on your phone to have a visual on your phone of the building's floor plan. You could also see, in terms of the summit building, what time the events were and what the event was. This helps guide everyone, not just people with disabilities, so that they aren't running around taking extra steps, extra effort, extra time, figuring out where they are in this big convention center. The next is, I don't know if you've heard of Wordly. It's a translation service. Anyone have heard of Wordly? You have. Wordly is a wonderful tool. Let me explain to you. If you were using it right now, everything I'm saying would be on your phone, all the captions, instantly, in any one of over 50 languages, instantly. Or if you had a headset and earbuds, you could actually enhance my voice through your personal device. And here's how it works. Wordly gives a QR code that's on the poster. This was the poster outside the room. Then people snap a picture on their phone to connect to that session's Wordly translation. And then step 2 is choose the language you want. Step 3, either read the language or have it translated audio. So this is a wonderful presentation for not just people with low hearing or low vision. People who have learning difficulties can read and hear at the same time. So it's great. Or people with other languages other than the language of the spoken person. And sometimes people have accents and you don't understand them. It can translate. Now, take a look here. The doors to the ballroom stayed open independently. We didn't have to have anyone there holding the doors, so people could file into the big ballroom for the general plenary session. Then they got some beautiful yellow fluorescent tape. We have the pink one here. And they decided to put these reserved spaces for all the scooters and people in power wheelchairs or manual wheelchairs, not just in the back of the room, no. They would put them on the ends of aisles in the front, the middle, and the back. And so in this particular room, you see we have a wide center aisle. Could I park a scooter there and not block the aisle? I think I could. But another option is to reserve that space. And then they put a 8.5 by 11 just sheet of paper with the universal symbol for accessibility. So people knew those spots were for accessible vehicles. Does that make sense? Brilliant idea. All they did was in their toolkit, all you meeting planners come with boxes and bags of your toolkit. So they have door stops, they have duct tape, and they have signage for reserving seats. Not only the seats for the scooters, but the seats on the chairs. Some people wanted to be by the sign language interpreter. Other people were lip readers, or they just said, "Can I sit in the front row?" And so that's what they did. They reserved those seats for anyone who wanted them. Isn't that a brilliant idea? Hopefully you're doing that. Sign language interpreter was up on a stage. She had a light on her so those people could see her well. An interesting side note, there were people that had not asked for a sign language interpreter, but they went to the meeting professional later and said, "I am so glad you had one. I didn't ask for one, but it made it so much easier." So they were in the audience, but no one knew that they would benefit from a sign language interpreter. They also had a choir on stage, and so when they were singing, the words they were singing were actually captioned on the big screen so the audience could read what the song was about. I thought that was another nice step. In the hallway during breaks, they had this wonderful area. Can you see how you could put your laptop there? You could put your phone there. You can charge it on the, there's electric here. You can charge all your devices. You could also charge your scooters down here. You could sit here, or you can just sit right here in your scooter or wheelchair. So it's very inclusive in that hallway. Here I am in the scooter going into the restroom, no power door. I was furious. I'd have to get somebody, anyone, please open that door because I can't get in or get out because the scooter is too big and I can't manipulate it without really banging into that door. So we needed to put door stops in, and we did later. They had the little inexpensive wooden door stops, and we just said, prop all restroom doors open throughout the entire conference, and that's what we did. So that was a simple solution. It made it work. Also an ADA compliance in terms of Braille right here, in terms of big letters, in terms of raised letters. And I like that they use the more contemporary universal symbol for accessibility. So I knew that was going to be an accessible restroom. If the restroom is accessible, please put the symbol on it so I know to go in there. Otherwise, I'm looking all over the convention center going, where is the accessible restroom? So mark them and mark the stall too. I'm finding too many of them are not marking the accessible stall with that universal symbol, and then other people are using it and I have to wait in line. So it's nice if it's marked so people are aware that is there. Again, the restroom signage, an all gender one, and then they had a wellness room, a quiet room, a place for people who just needed a break. They weren't feeling well. It's not a place to go and work on your laptop, and that's what we're concerned about. We don't want people just going in there because it's like a quiet library. No, it's a wellness room. If you need something else, find another room. That one's for people who need to be accommodated for their health. Also notice the design on the door handle. This is better than the round knob for paralysis or arthritis, the lever style handles. Again, this was a new convention center in Seattle, so we expect that. No doors on the major restrooms. That makes it a lot easier to come and go, and we're seeing that design more contemporary. The restroom, beautiful. Notice the lighting. The mirror is at an appropriate height. This morning I was at the hotel room here at the Hilton trying to put on lipstick when the mirror is only this high. But they did have a portable makeup mirror. So I put the portable makeup mirror, and I hope I put it on appropriately. But it's a great automatic dispensers all through and a place for trash. It made sense in terms of how this restroom was designed intuitively. We also then went into the accessible stall. If you haven't been in one, go in and look at it. You're going to see the horizontal grab bars, and you're going to see the vertical one. So I got to congratulate them. Not everyone is ADA compliant putting that vertical one in. A lot of them are only putting the side one in. You need it here at the side and the back wall. Those are both required. They put the trash receptacle close to the toilet. They've got a nice tall toilet. It's probably about 17 inches from the floor, a better height for transferring from a wheelchair. Toilet paper dispenser, reachable. I could have grabbed a paper toilet seat cover and placed it here very easily. So just in case you're not aware, that is a great example of an accessible stall. Then we go into the exhibit area and the big dining hall at the Seattle Convention Center. It's time for breakfast. Everyone is coming in here. The doors did not have door stops, and everybody was opening and closing and opening and closing. I said, you've got to put door stops in there. We need that open all the time. You got a big group coming and going into the exhibit hall all day long. So they did. Notice the flooring is easy to roll on. It's all concrete. The carpet was very thin. I could roll on it easily. Granted, I was in a scooter this time, so of course it's going to be easy. But in a manual wheelchair, that was a very thin exhibit hall area. Saving money, don't have carpet in your exhibit halls. It's also more sustainable and green because they throw that away after the conference. So why not have it just concrete? The food for breakfast, for lunch, was set up on tables that were no higher than 30 inches so I could reach everything. That was very handy. Now, when it came time to get utensils, they're a little high here. So I'd have to ask somebody, would you get me a fork? Would you get me a knife? They could have done a little better job there, putting the utensils lower. But the food was fine. And then let's take a look at how the food was labeled. Very nice. We could actually see the contents. We could see the symbol, vegetarian or vegan, and read in large font what was that item. Do a good job with that for dietary reasons and for allergies and religious purposes. So they did that throughout the entire conference, anytime food was as a buffet, and it always was a buffet. Then again, during the exhibit hall area, you could take that food and go over to the taller tables and stand and eat and network. But of course, we needed something lower. And so there I am in the scooter. I could go anywhere. And the scooter was fitting through the aisles very well. So the tables were set so that I had plenty of room between the tables to get around and then join people at the tables here instead of being at the other networking station. Then at about 3 o'clock, they brought out the snacks for everybody in the hallways. I thought they did a great job here with the snacks on various different shelves where I could reach the low ones, other people could reach the tall ones. They were identical food items, very, very handy. And again, they were all labeled appropriately. So, ready to go somewhere else? We're going to move from the city of Seattle to the city of St. Pete Beach, Florida. I was the keynote speaker at this conference, the Independent Planner Education Conference 2020. We had an opening reception at the Don Cesar Hotel, and then we also had another event here on this boardwalk on the beach. I was happy it wasn't on sand. It was actually on a wooden platform. And so that made it easy for me. And to transport me there, how am I going to get from the Don Cesar to the off-site event? Of course, in a wheelchair. They were going to bring in the big buses. So they asked me in advance. The meeting professional said, Rosemarie, can you get on a big bus? And I said, yes, if I hold on to the handrails, put me in the front seat, and then put my wheelchair underneath. You don't need to rent a special taxi or Uber that's a wheelchair accessible one. I can do this one. So that's what they did. They put me in the same bus. This is the opening night reception at the Don Cesar. Food was appropriately labeled. I could get to the forks and the knives and the spoons and the plates and the food. It was all easy for me during the open reception. But then I went to the carving station and some of the food was not accessible. I couldn't reach it. It was on a tall shelf. However, the staff was right there, said, what can I get for you? So that's the accommodation for me, is have that totally staffed so that things can be presented on a very VIP level. Now seating, you can take a good look at this. We have various seating. These people are enjoying their cocktails and their hors d'oeuvres here at this coffee table. Here is a 30-inch high table. Notice the chairs have armrests. That's another good thing to have so people can get in and out of chairs more easily. We have some bar heights. These are about 42 inches. So we had some variability. However, how do you get between them? They didn't make enough space for anybody to get from one area of the dining area to another. You need about 36 inches between the chairs. So they had it too crowded. But they did think about that I was coming. And so they had a table there, and they had removed the chair in advance, knowing that I was going to be at this opening reception. So I just rolled in, the table leg was not in the way, and I joined the group right there. That worked out. The next morning was breakfast. It was a served breakfast. She said to me, Rosemarie, I've got a reserved seat for you. Okay, she took me to there's the sign. And then take a look at those tablecloths. Can you understand my concern about the length of this one? They have 2 tablecloths. I like the short one. Take a look at this next one. What do you think happens when you have a wheelchair and a long tablecloth? It gets stuck. Yeah. So, and also, luckily, she had reserved a spot with no table legs. So if you're reserving spots, make sure there's no table legs under that spot. So be aware, again, blind spots. She was not aware that the tablecloth was going to get caught in my wheels. So we had to make sure we pushed it under the table. All right, ready to go out of Florida to the next place? We're on a site visit now. This is before the convention. The other 2 are during the convention. Let's go to Denver, my most recent one. I was just there in December. I did 16 hotels and the Colorado Convention Center in 2 days. We were busy. I love my clients. I love Visit Denver. They arranged it with all the hotels so that we made progress. This is a beautiful center, downtown Colorado. They're going to have their convention. It's the American Psychological Association this summer. So I will not have slides unless they send those to me. They've got automatic doors. They've got drop-off points that are accessible, a drive also, and plenty of accessible parking. They were proud of this ramp. It had totally been reconstructed because they were not ADA compliant. So they had to tear their ramp out and redo it, and this is the new ramp in the Colorado Convention Center. I rolled down and found it to be very easy. There's also handrails on both sides so that people can grip it if they need to, if they're ambulatory. Restrooms, no doors on there. Again, looking at the sign with the accessible symbol here in the Colorado Center. This one is a restroom for all, no electric, so we need to prop that one open with door stops. I like this one, the mother's room. They had a nice way to say it was vacant. So if it was vacant, the little green sign, or they slide it over and someone was in there. They had a refrigerator, a nice comfortable chair, and then the sign here indicated where to get the key to unlock it if it was vacant. If it was locked, the mother could go in there and do her nursing. They also had this sensory room for someone on the autism spectrum with different things in there to occupy them and to calm their nerves. I thought that was a very creative room for people who get overly stimulated. Ready to go to another one? This was also in December. I love my clients, and here they are, the Visit Baltimore team and my client from the Unitarian Universalist Association. I did about 6 hotels and the Baltimore Convention Center for that one. We had the people from the convention center in the photo, as well as the AV and production crew. We all went through this together in December on the site visit. We stayed together the whole time. Now, if you've ever been to the Baltimore Convention Center, the Hilton is attached. So you get out of the Hilton, go through a hallway, all connected as one. You get into an elevator at the Hilton, board the crosswalk, the skywalk, and that elevator then takes you to the convention center. The problem is, I could get my scooter in there with 3 other people. That's it. That's the size of the elevator. This convention is renting 50 scooters. How do we get 50 scooters from the Hilton into the convention center? You're going to see the answer pretty soon. I can't wait to see it when I'm there in June to see how it worked out. We are now in the area of the exhibit area. The doors stay open. The carpet looked like it was going to be easy to roll on, lever-style handles again. We have the restrooms with no doors, so people can come and go out of the exhibit area very easily. they're marked. There's also the all-gender restroom with the accessible symbol. However, no power-assisted doors. So that's going to be a little bit of a challenge if you can't get in there. This one, however, we found the women's restroom, the door stayed open. So you didn't need a door stop. It could just be propped open all the time. Going into that restroom now, you'll see the mirrors are all the way to the bottom, so you can see from the bottom of your chin all the way up to the top of your head. Everything was automatic, and the flow was appropriate in terms of how people had the knee space and the height of the counter so that you could get under it. Now let's go into this accessible stall. There's two pictures here. You're looking at the one on the left. That is the entrance to the stall. I'll point out the hook that is here. That's one of the ADA compliance issues. A lot of times I was finding the hook was missing or never was put in at all. So we have a great door. It's 36 inches. We know there's a grab bar here. So here's my scooter trying to get in there. Now here it is when I did get in. I took a picture getting in. What do you see works and what do you see might be a problem here? What? The toilet seat cover is not reachable, so that needs to be put at a lower position. You see another issue with the grab bars. The only horizontal, not a vertical. So they're not in ADA compliance for two things. The reach range should be no higher than 48 inches on that toilet seat cover. And just for the record, you know, you're looking at things that are low too. We don't want something lower than like 15 inches because then they can't reach it. So that needed a little redesign in terms of Baltimore. Now, that's the solution we're working with on the 50 scooters. This is the freight elevator. We are commandeering it as a passenger elevator. The convention center manager pledged to us he would clean it up, clean the aisles to make it look like part of the convention center, not the freight elevator. So now we're going to have to put signage. We're going to decorate it. They have a whole committee. UUA has a whole decorating committee that is going to lead signs from the main convention center to this freight elevator so people know they're welcome to get in there instead of that one elevator that only held one scooter. So that's what it looked like in December. I can't wait to see it June 19th to see what they did to it. And that is the interior of that freight elevator. So they're working hard on that. Now, here's my takeaway. As I go to these convention centers, I always ask, do you have a universal adult changing table? How many of you are familiar with adult changing tables? If you are willing to raise your hand, take note, there are no hands here either. And that's what they look at me and say, what is this? There are people that need to have their clothes changed that aren't babies. These are people with legitimate needs. They're either full adults or teenagers or 9-year-olds, but we need to accommodate them. I'm proud to say the Columbus Convention Center has had one for 2 years. And if you go on my website and my YouTube channel, you'll see a tour of the Columbus Convention Center that I did when we had the PCMA had their convening leaders conference in Columbus, and I led an accessibility tour. But we need to make sure if any of our attendees are going to need an adult changing table that we know where it is. And it's usually set up so that you can remotely control it in terms of the height. And some of them will have a ceiling hoist lift so the person can be lifted out of their wheelchair and put onto the table. So it's a point of dignity. Here's the second thing that I asked them. If there was an emergency and you're in a hotel room, not on the ground floor, and you can't do stairs very well, how will you get out if there is an emergency, a fire? And I asked the convention center, I asked the hotels this question, do you have emergency evacuation chairs in the staircase? Have you ever seen these? Again, raise your hand if you have. 1. We need to ask for these more appropriately. We need the staff to know how to use them. They shouldn't be in a storage area. They should be by the staircase so that someone could get in there and another person can help them get down the stairs. Some of them are for 2 people. Some of them are power assist. Some of them are for 1 person. But by golly, I would feel a lot better in a hotel knowing when I look at the emergency staircase that there was an evacuation chair mounted on the wall or somewhere in the corner. So I am an advocate of these to help people to get out. We never know what the emergency is going to be, do we? They just crop up. How are you going to get everyone out safely? I'm not about to wait for the fire department to rescue me. I want other people who will volunteer to help me get out of that building. So, here's some takeaways. If you have a list of your own, we can talk about that later, but I'd like to make sure you know who's coming on your registration form and ask them, contact them later so that you know who is coming. And then the money has to be in the budget. I mean, this particular arrangement, I had a client once that hired me to speak, and they said the hotel was going to charge them more than my speaking fee to put a ramp up and a stage. What can I do? I said, are you kidding me? They're going to be charging you more than my speaking fee so that I can be accommodated to speak at your convention? So I called the ADA. They have an 800 number, and I asked them. I said, what's the deal? They said, the hotel provided the stage. That's the obstacle. They're required then to have the ramp to get to the obstacle. They should not be charging extra for that ramp, and it must be ADA compliant. So hotels need to buy them, rent them, or borrow them between other hotels. You can't put a 6-foot ramp here. I've had clients think that was ADA compliant. Can you imagine what that would be like? And then someone says, well, we'll push you up there and pull you down. I'm like, no, you're not. Okay, then we'll lift you up. No, you're not. If you don't have what I need, and I've asked you before during the pre-planning call, and I arrive and it's not there an hour in advance, I'm going to say, you've got an hour to put that up. And I've had that happen at the Chicago, at the American Institute of Architects. I spoke at the luncheon. They had the thing all set up for me. But I spoke in the afternoon in another room. Guess what? They forgot to move it. An hour before, they scrambled, and within an hour, it was assembled. So we've got to deal with those kinds of issues in advance to communicate what we need. Put it in the budget, sign language interpreters, and get them early because they're hard sometimes to get a hold of. They're busy. Do the site visit, inspect the facilities in advance, and then talk to the convention center. We are having an issue with the small chairs in Baltimore. They're about that size. The client is not happy, saying we need bigger chairs. We have bigger people coming. Convention center, buy some additional chairs for our larger participants so they'll be comfortable. Convention center said no. That wasn't good on the site visit. So now UUA is buying 50 large-sized chairs, and then they're going to donate it to the Baltimore UUA churches so that they can have them for their churches. So again, things that we hadn't thought about, and now those are common questions that I'm asking. Do you have chairs with armrests at the dining tables, at the breakfast areas, at the networking areas? And now some different sizes of chairs. So meet with people and get your dining areas and your meeting rooms all set up to be more inclusive. So here's my ending. Are you going to make an intentional choice rather than risk an unintentional harm? It's just got to be baked in. It's got to be a part of your everyday planning, everything you're doing, thinking about making sure everyone feels included, everyone belongs, no one is frustrated, no one comes to you complaining later. So go to my website. You can also go to my YouTube channel, as I mentioned. There's articles, there's podcasts, there's replays of virtual presentations that I've done. I mean, we have loaded it up. There's a special section at rosemariespeaks.com just for you, just for the meeting professionals. So you don't have to search very far. My husband is my webmaster. Thank you, Mark. Attaboy. You do a great job posting all of the things, articles that I've been interviewed for, and podcast about accessible meetings. This is my thing. I've been doing it since 2019 and doing a lot with my meetings right now with my great clients and looking for more. So what are you going to do? You're going to go to the site before you contract with them. It's too late. If you've already got a contract with a convention center, they're not about to negotiate with you anymore when you start asking for something. So why don't you do your site visits first? And the American Psychological Association told me that after we left. They said, the next site we have, we're going to have you come with us again before we contract. We shouldn't do it backwards again. And then training for the staff and volunteers. I'm doing that right now with UUA. And then vendors to supply it. They've had a difficult time finding 50 scooters in Baltimore. I'll find out next week, did they find 50 scooters? They prefer to work with someone in Baltimore so that they feel more at ease rather than a national company that's bringing them in. So there we have a way to get in touch with me simply. We also have now about 5 minutes, and we have a live microphone, and we have the ability to ask me anything. So here's the chance for you to share a story, to get ideas, to give me feedback. Who has something that they'd like to talk about today or ask? And we got a mic. Here we go. All right, it's on live.
I am.
All right.
I actually do an annual conference at a large hotel in Maryland. And I recently had both of my knees replaced. And so I had to, as the head planner, I needed to be able to move quickly. So I rented a scooter on my own. What I found out was how very challenging it is, as you said, to get in and out of the restrooms, to have access up and down. Now, there are lots of elevators in the hotel itself, but in the conference center, there's literally one elevator on the public side, and it's rather small. So I did a really quote unquote bang up job of banging up that scooter, trying to figure out how to get in and out of this elevator. And so I did bring it to the attention not only of the director of events, but also the general manager of the hotel. We had a long conversation about it. And while it's not fixed yet, they're working on it.
Great.
So that was like it gave me definitely a new perspective, or a clearer perspective on taking care of my attendees that need access to different
Thanks
areas.
for that story. Thank you very much. Who else has a question or a story? And we'll let you have a microphone so we'll capture that easily. Thank you. We're doing
I
good.
too was a recipient of the lack of ADA. I was in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I too had a knee replacement, and I needed this wheelchair. What I learned was the doors weren't power operated. I was in a hotel, had to ride across the street to the convention center. Nothing was power operated, and I'm standing there saying, who is going to help me? And it was pouring down rain. So I had a situation, and this nice gentleman came. He just saw me looking like, how am I going to get in? And he literally opened the door. He made sure I got in, not only into the convention center, but then when I got to the doors for the ballroom, they weren't power operated. And no one was there to let me in. I felt so disappointed. But yes, I used the power of my pen to tell them. They said, hey, what did you think about your visit to Indianapolis? Oh, I had a lot to say. So much so that they called me because I wasn't ashamed to put my phone number and my name about, hey, this was my first time in your city and this is how I was treated and I'm let down. Will I return? But they had a list of things they were going to try to improve upon.
Great.
So remains to be seen. I had a committee and I informed my team, hey, you all should have did a site visit before you signed up.
Yes.
Because of the situation. But thank you so much. This was so enlightening, and I got pages of notes, so I will go back and inform. Thank you.
All right, good for you. All right, we got time for another question or a comment or a story to share.
I don't have a question. I also have double knee replacements, and I have an autoimmune disease, so I use a cane, but that's not my story. My daughter has a service dog, and I have found out with the recent DEI, executive order on DEI, that people are now lumping ADA compliance in with that DEI. Do you have any? We've had situations where her service dog has been denied access because people are saying, we don't have to do that anymore because of the executive order. So do you have any suggestions on how to handle that?
Yeah, that is not true. ADA is still a viable law. It is the law. Therefore, that service dog has every legal support.
Right, but people don't understand that. And,
Well, then just say, here's the ADA number, why don't you call?
Okay.
It's an 800 number, they'll answer the phone. If you really have to deal with a confrontation, to say, I know my rights, the ADA is still very viable. And so restrooms have to have accessibility, doors need to be wide. There are specific laws about that, and they can get sued and fined.
Okay, thank you.
When they're not in compliance. Yeah, I had a fun question the other day. Someone in the meeting's audience, just like you, she goes, do we have to provide raw meat for service dogs? She had that request from one of the people there that had a service dog saying, will you provide raw meat for my service dog? And they asked me, is that something that we have to do? And so I called ADA again. They know the people that have service dogs bring their own food. Now, granted, if they need a bowl of water, they do need to know where the relief stations are, that's fine. But you are not required to provide their food. Hey, this has been great. I hope that you realize this is just a step-by-step approach. You can do this. It is not overwhelming. Hopefully today has given you motivation, a direction to say, this is what I can do. These are my notes I'm going to share when I go back. These are my pictures of the slides. I'm happy to continue this conversation and to work with you. So I'm here the rest of the day. Please come and see me, talk to me. Be happy to work with you. Thank you very much. Thank you.